The wind moved slow across the dry plain, whispering through the tall, brittle grass that surrounded the lonely ranch like a faded sea of gold. The sun hung low and tired, casting a rusty glow across the horizon. In the far distance, a wagon lay broken beside the dirt road, its wheels splintered, its canvas torn like the last page of a story left unfinished. And beside it sat a child. Ethan Cole had lived most of his 40 years in silence. His ranch stretched wide but empty, acres of dust, fences, and memories of better days. Once his wife Clara had filled the house with laughter, but after she passed, that laughter was buried along with her in the small hill under the oak tree. Since then, Ethan spoke mostly to his horse and the cattle. The walls of his house had learned to echo back his silence. He rode that evening out of habit to check the boundary fence, to clear his head from ghosts it wouldn't leave. But as he crested the hill, his eyes caught something that didn't belong in the stillness: smoke, faint and gray, curling up from the old road. He frowned, nudged his horse forward, and rode down the slope. The closer he came, the clearer it became. A wagon wreck, the kind settlers used to travel with. Half-burnt wheels snapped. And around it, nothing. No horses. No movement. Only a small figure sitting in the dust. Ethan slowed his horse. The figure turned. It was a little girl. It couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Her face was streaked with dust, her dress torn at the sleeve. In her eyes was something he hadn't seen in a long time, a mix of terror and hope, like someone who had lost everything but still believed something might find her. Ethan dismounted, boots crunching against the dirt. "Hey there, little one," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "You hurt?" The girl didn't answer. She just looked at him, clutching something in her tiny hands. A small rag doll with one button eye missing. He knelt to her level. "Where's your ma and pa?" She swallowed hard, eyes flickering toward the wagon. Ethan turned his head and froze. 2 shapes lay still beside the wreck, covered by a piece of canvas. He stood quietly, removed his hat, and let the wind carry the silence. He'd seen death before. The prairie was a hard place that took more than it gave. But seeing it beside a child, that hit deeper. He looked back at the girl. "You got a name, sweetheart?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lila." "Well, Lila," he said softly. "My name's Ethan. I reckon you've been through a storm." She nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. "They're gone," she said, barely a whisper. "Mama and Papa." They wouldn't wake up. Ethan felt something twist inside him, a memory, sharp and sudden. The day he lost Clara, the same small voice. The same empty air around the house afterward. He didn't plan to speak, but the words came out anyway. "He must be hungry." She nodded again. He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a piece of jerky and a canteen of water, and handed them to her. She took the water like it was life itself, drinking greedily before stopping to catch her breath. He smiled faintly. "Easy now. You drink too fast, your Beli'll get mad at you." She gave a small, fragile smile, the kind that tried to remember how to exist. He looked around. The sky was darkening. Coyotes would come soon. He couldn't leave her there, not in this lonely stretch. "Leela," he said quietly, "I can't leave you here. You'll come with me, all right? I've got a warm fire and food. You can rest there." She hesitated, holding her doll close. "Will it be far?" "Not too far," he said. "Just hold my hand." For a moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out, her small hand trembling as it slipped into his rough, calloused one. He squeezed gently, looked her in the eyes, and said something that surprised even himself. "I'll be your father, little one. I reckon you need one, and maybe I need someone too." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't speak, just nodded once, twice, then looked back at the wagon as if saying goodbye. Ethan lifted her up onto his horse, climbed behind her, and wrapped one arm around her tiny shoulders. As they rode away, the setting sun turned the world to fire. Behind them, the wagon grew smaller until it was nothing but a shadow swallowed by dusk. When they reached the ranch, night had fallen. The house looked the same as always. Tired wood, empty porch, one window still glowing faintly. Ethan had never thought much about this silence before, but tonight it felt heavier with another heartbeat inside it. He helped Lila down, opened the door, and the smell of old wood and dust greeted them. He lit the lantern, and its warm glow filled the small kitchen. "You can sit there," he said, pointing to the wooden chair by the table. She obeyed quietly, eyes darting around like a frightened bird. Ethan poured some warm milk into a cup and slid it toward her. "Ain't much," he said, "but it'll help." She took it with both hands. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded, then walked to the fireplace and started the fire. The crackling sound filled the silence. And for the first time in a long while, the house felt almost alive. After a while, Lila spoke again. "Do you live here all alone?" He stared into the fire. "Yeah," he said finally. "Used to have someone, my wife. But she's gone now." "Oh," she said softly. I'm sorry." He smiled faintly. "Don't you be sorry. Life's a hard ride sometimes." She nodded, playing with her doll. Then she looked up, her eyes shimmering in the firelight. Do you think my mama and papa are in heaven? Ethan paused, throat tight. Yeah, sweetheart. I reckon they are. And I think they're mighty happy knowing you're safe. She smiled at that, a small, trembling smile, and finished her milk. Later, after she'd fallen asleep on the couch, Ethan sat quietly by the fire, watching her breathe. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he hadn't let himself feel in years. Hope, maybe, or purpose. The sound of the wind outside seemed softer now, less lonely. He whispered to himself, guess it's just us now, kid. Outside, the moon rose over the plains, washing the ranch in silver light. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled, and the sound faded into the distance. Inside, the fire burned low, but not out. And that night, for the first time in years, Ethan Cole didn't feel alone. Morning crept over the plains like a slow, golden tide. Sunlight slipped through the cracks of the ranch house, painting stripes across the old wooden floor. The smell of coffee drifted through the air, mingling with the faint scent of burning logs. Ethan Cole stood by the window, hat in hand, staring out across the land he'd worked his whole life, endless, silent and lonely. But today something was different. Behind him he could hear soft breathing, the small, rhythmic sound of a child still asleep under a borrowed quilt on his old couch. For the first time in years, there was life inside those walls. He turned back, eyes softening as he watched Lila sleeping. Her small hand clutched the tattered doll she'd carried from the wreck. The doll's button eye glinted in the morning light. Ethan smiled faintly, a smile that felt strange on his face, as if he'd forgotten how. He poured himself a cup of coffee, took a slow sip, and whispered, Clara, if you could see me now. He imagined his late wife smiling from somewhere beyond the clouds. She'd always wanted children, but life and then loss had stolen that dream. And now here, by some twist of fate, a child had found her way to him. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe he thought some prayers don't die. They just wait. Lila stirred. Her small voice floated through the quiet room. Reason? He turned. Mornin', sweetheart. You sleep all right? She rubbed her eyes. Yes, sir. Sure. I dreamed my mama was smiling. She said I was safe. Ethan nodded slowly, fighting the ache in his throat. I reckon she's right. She looked around the room, her expression shy but curious. Is this your home? It is, he said. And I reckon it's yours too now if you'll stay. Her eyes widened a little as if she didn't quite believe it. Stay? Really? Yeah, Ethan said gently. You ain't got anywhere else to go, and well, this place could use some laughter again. She smiled, a small, bright smile that broke through the years of silence like a sunrise. Then I'll stay, she said softly. Thank you, Mr. Ethan. He tipped his hat with a faint grin. You can call me Pa if you like. She blinked. Pa? Yeah, he said. Only if it feels right. There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence where something shifted between them. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. Pa, he exhaled, looking away for a second as emotion welled up in him. That one small word filled every empty corner of his house. All right then, he said, clearing his,
throat. Let's get you some breakfast. The days that followed brought new rhythm to the ranch. Ethan found himself doing things he hadn't done in years, fixing the porch swing, baking bread, humming while he worked. Leela followed him everywhere, her small boots crunching beside his. She'd watch with wide eyes as he saddled the horse, gathered eggs, or mended fences. Pa, she'd ask, how do cows know which grass to eat? He'd chuckle. They don't, they just eat what's there, kind of like me. She'd giggle and he'd shake his head, smiling despite himself. At night, they'd sit by the fire. Ethan would tell her stories about the stars, how everyone was a soul watching over the earth. She'd listen wide-eyed, clutching her doll. Sometimes she'd fall asleep mid-story, and he'd carry her to bed, tucking her in like something precious he didn't want to lose. Each day softened something in Ethan. The hard shell of loneliness that had wrapped around him for years began to crack, and in its place, warmth, the kind that had nothing to do with the fire. But the plains had a way of testing every bit of happiness it gave. One afternoon, as the wind picked up dust along the fence line, a wagon appeared on the horizon. Ethan squinted. Two men rode up beside it, strangers, dressed in long coats, dusted with travel. He felt his gut tighten. Strangers rarely brought good news. He motioned for Lila to stay near the house and walked toward them, hand resting near the handle of his revolver, not in threat, but in habit. Morning, he called. The taller man tipped his hat. Morning. You the owner of this ranch? I am, Ethan said. What brings you here? Name's Harris, the man said. We're with the county. There was word of a wagon wreck up north, A family gone missing. You seen anything? Ethan's heart sank, though he kept his face calm. Might have, he said slowly. Why you asking? There was a couple and a child, Harris said. We buried the parents this morning. Sheriff's looking for the girl. Folks from back east. Relatives might come to claim her. Ethan felt the world tilt slightly. His fingers curled. You saying you're looking for her? That's right, Harris said. You seen a little girl, maybe 6, brown hair, blue eyes? Ethan hesitated, just long enough for Harris to notice. Mr. Cole? He drew a slow breath. I found her, he said finally. She's safe here. The other man, younger and sterner, spoke up. Then she'll need to come with us. Sheriff will place her with kin. Ethan's jaw tightened. She's been through enough, he said quietly. You can tell your sheriff she's got a home here. That ain't your choice, Harris said gently. She ain't yours. Ethan looked at the ground, fists trembling. He'd known this moment might come, but he hadn't expected it so soon. Behind him he heard the door creak. Lila stood there clutching her doll, eyes wide. Pa, she said softly. Who are they? The taller man glanced at her, his tone softening. You must be Lila. We're here to take you to your family. Lila's face went pale. She ran behind Ethan, clutching his coat. No, I don't want to go. I want to stay here. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. It's all right, sweetheart. Harris sighed. Mr. Cole, I get it. You're trying to help. But you can't keep her without the law's say-so. Ethan's eyes hardened. The law don't know her like I do. She's safe here. She's happy. She's not your blood, the younger man snapped. Ethan stepped closer, voice low but steady. Blood don't make a family, son. Love does. There was silence, only the wind between them. Finally, Harris said quietly, I'll tell the sheriff she's here, but he'll come himself next week. You'd best be ready. Ethan nodded once. I'll be ready. As they rode away, dust rising behind them, Leila looked up at him, tears streaking her cheeks. Are they going to take me, Pa? Ethan knelt, gripping her shoulders. Not if I can help it, he said softly. You belong right here. She threw her arms around his neck, crying into his shirt. He held her tight, staring out toward the road. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land. He made a promise then, silent but fierce, that no one would take her from him. Days passed. Ethan worked harder than ever, fixing fences, stocking food, as if preparing for a siege. At night, he taught Lila to pray, not for miracles, but for strength. Sometimes, he told her, God don't change what happens. He changes us so we can face it. The day the sheriff came, the sky was heavy with clouds. Ethan stood on the porch, rifle resting beside him. The sheriff was a fair man, old, weary-eyed. He dismounted, removed his hat, and said, Ethan, I heard what happened. Ethan nodded. She's inside. The sheriff sighed. You've taken good care of her. Folks in town are talking. Say she smiles again because of you. But there's law, Ethan, you know that. Ethan looked him in the eye. Then the law's wrong this time. The sheriff hesitated. Maybe, he said quietly. But maybe it can bend. He stepped inside, saw Lila sitting by the fire, clutching her doll. She looked up nervously. The sheriff knelt. You remember me, sweetheart? From town? She nodded. You like it here? Yes, sir, she said softly. Pa takes care of me. He glanced at Ethan, then back at her. You want to stay? Yes, she whispered. Please. The sheriff stood, turned toward Ethan, and said, Sometimes the best family is the one we find. I'll file it as guardianship, temporary for now. If any kin comes forward, we'll revisit it. Till then, she stays. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. Thank you, Sheriff. The sheriff smiled faintly. Take good care of her, Ethan. You've both been given a second chance. As the sheriff rode away, Ethan looked down at Lila. She was grinning through tears. We can stay? He knelt, brushed her hair back, and smiled. We can stay. She hugged him tight, whispering, I love you, Pa. He closed his eyes. I love you too, Lila, and I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always be your father. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft, gentle, cleansing. The ranch seemed to breathe again. The fields shimmered, the earth drank deep. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt whole. He stood on the porch that evening, watching Lila chase raindrops, laughter ringing through the air. The loneliness that had once lived inside him was gone, replaced by something stronger, brighter, and infinitely more beautiful. Family.